Chapter 201. Max Level Skills, Landing on the Island for Battle. Soon, Ling followed the locator and arrived at this supply island. Naturally, she wouldn't just stand on the island and wait for the enemies to arrive. Taking advantage of this time, she decisively went to search for skill cards on the island. This supply island was no different from other supply islands. It was a primeval forest, the entire island completely covered by tall trees. The island also had many animals, and a small stream running through the entire island provided ample fresh water. At the center of the island was a heavily eroded karst cave, filled with beautiful stalactites. Ling guessed that the treasure chest must be hidden here, so her initial goal was very clear: to head straight here. Sure enough, upon reaching the center of the cave, she saw the unadorned treasure chest. With a slash of her sword, she cut open the lock, took out the green card inside, and chose to use it. Your current skill level is Grandmaster, Max. Note: subsequent skill cards obtained will be automatically converted into equivalent experience points. Already max level? Ling's face didn't show much excitement. Instead, the note on the next line was more eye-catching. Skill cards could be obtained from the points blind boxes in the shop, which meant that as long as her luck was good enough, she could even directly use points to exchange for experience points. Coincidentally, her current good fortune had already become a passive skill. This is simply a godsend. At this moment, Ling was very confident in advancing to Queen level before entering the final island. Once she advanced, it would undoubtedly be a huge help for her to clear the islands. Taking out the navigation locator, the dial was now filled with dense red dots, too many to count. Obviously, while she was searching for skill cards, these survivors had already entered her 100-mile range. But Ling wasn't panicked. She still calmly sat in place, waiting for these guys to land on the island. Then she would deal with them one by one, and finally sink into the sea along with the island beneath her feet. On the other side of the ocean, there were nearly 200 ships of various sizes carrying the survivors, all heading towards the supply island where Ling was located. The scene was very spectacular. This was the first time in history that so many survivors had united together to deal with a single enemy. The waves were breaking, and the ships, with their sails raised, stirred up a commotion, undoubtedly bringing great confidence to the people. The lineup this time was so luxurious, they didn't believe that so many people working together couldn't defeat a single opponent. They could accept the opponent escaping, but they absolutely couldn't accept their own failure. These ships lined up like a vast fleet, and as they got closer and closer to their target, they began to use telescopes to constantly observe the situation ahead. On the leading large ships, several survivors responsible for observing the sea also discovered the situation. There's an island ahead. According to the coordinates, the number 1 on the leaderboard is on that island, and there are no other people's coordinates around. Great, what are we waiting for? Speed up. Everyone immediately became excited upon hearing this. The opponent was alone without any help. As long as they surrounded the island, not even a mosquito would be able to fly out. But, stop mumbling like a woman. But what? It seems like it's not a construction island ahead, but a supply island. So what if it's a supply island? What kind of traps can she set up there? Exactly, don't be so alarmed. Unless she has a nuclear bomb, we, with over 1,000 people, can drown her with just one spit from each of us. As the last survivor finished speaking, the others became excited. Even if they really succeeded, they never considered the internal strife that would occur within this group made up of multiple organizations. Of course, all of this was on the premise that they could succeed. As the distance got closer and closer, the coordinates on the locator were gradually enlarging, accurately pinpointing Ling's position. In this regard, it had to be said that the system was quite humane. It was afraid that these people wouldn't be able to find her specific location on the island. One by one, the ships began to approach the shore, the anchors connected to iron chains heavily crashing onto the beach, and then the survivors began to jump off. The densely packed crowd all gathered on the beach, with only 7 survivors specializing in auxiliary healing remaining at the back of the group to handle logistics and simultaneously monitor the target's location in real time on the locator. Actually, at such a close distance, whether or not the number 1 on the leaderboard's location was public wasn't important anymore. As long as they entered the range of the locator, all survivors would be displayed. They could see Ling, and Ling could also see them through the locator. It was just that the colors displayed for each were different. At this moment, The beach was crowded with dense little red dots, these coordinates already forming a solid mass on the screen. She observed the coordinates above, and when she saw these people finally moving, a smile appeared on her lips. The hunting game was about to begin on the beach. A survivor constantly observing the opponent saw that in just a blink of an eye, the red dots above instantly moved a distance, precisely overlapping with their own people. Careful, the target has moved. Although he shouted out in time, it was still too late. After all, with over 1,000 people landing on the island at the same time, and needing to leave enough combat space, it was destined that their distribution couldn't be too dense. At the forefront, the survivors within the forest walked in the lead, their eyes focused on what was ahead. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several sword chi sliced through the air, creating an explosion that instantly attacked in all directions. Blood splattered, adding a touch of red makeup to the ancient brown tree bark behind in just a single breath. The survivors at the vanguard didn't even have time to react, let alone see how the opponent attacked, and they were already dead under Ling's attack. Alert! Alert! The surrounding survivors were instantly shocked, and chaos erupted, the scene becoming somewhat messy for a moment. They were just a temporarily assembled team, and they didn't even understand each other's abilities, let alone have any kind of coordination. Coupled with the powerful strength the opponent had just displayed, 5 mammoth-level individuals had been instantly killed without warning. How could this not terrify them? Were they stronger than the opponent? No, they were only mammoth level 2. Observe the surroundings, gather quickly, prevent another sneak attack from the opponent, and think about the rewards this time. The commander in the crowd shouted, and everyone suddenly came to their senses, instantly acting as if they had been injected with chicken blood, and surprisingly began to cooperate with each other. Chapter 202. Combat. Awesome. They gathered together, some with their backs to trees, trying to avoid being ambushed from behind. However, they overlooked one problem. They still couldn't stop Ling's frontal attacks. Within the forest, the sheer number of people, over 1,000, meant that no matter how they organized themselves into a large team, there would always be significant disadvantages in their movements. While they were still on alert for the opponent's position, the commander located in the center of the crowd suddenly froze. Why hadn't the rearguard reported the opponent's position after such a long time? Had they forgotten the tactics they had formulated earlier? He turned around to look behind him, and his pupils instantly contracted. He saw the white figure appearing like a ghost behind the crowd, mercilessly eliminating the few survivors responsible for reporting positions, and even destroying all the positioning navigators in one go. How did she get behind the team? Ling met the commander's gaze, a cold smile appearing on her face. In the next second, her figure disappeared again, and the commander in the center of the crowd felt his hair stand on end, a sense of immense crisis welling up in his heart. Damn it, she's coming for me. Immediately after, the white-haired figure abruptly appeared before him. So fast, the man decisively used his ability, his entire body instantly becoming crystal clear and incredibly hard. Swish! A sword light flashed, and his skin was instantly broken open. This proud defense couldn't stop the opponent's attack at all. Blood spurted out, and in the blink of an eye, several deep wounds, bone deep, appeared on his body. Warm liquid splashed onto the faces of the people around him, and by the time these survivors reacted, the opponent's figure had already disappeared. Even though the man had withstood Ling's attack, he clearly had no more strength to fight, let alone command others in battle. Obviously, he had been lucky enough not to be killed with a single slash. Although the man wasn't entirely the backbone of this team, there was no doubt that he was one of the most prestigious individuals among them. Of course, strength was the main reason. But such a person, who was considered strong and prestigious in the eyes of everyone, was severely injured in just one attack by the opponent. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to everyone. Especially since the man had just been encouraging them, now it had clearly become a joke. These survivors had begun to panic, but now the arrow was knocked and had to be fired. Everyone hoped that someone could wear the opponent down so they could take advantage of the situation. After all, it's better for fellow Taoists to die than oneself to be poor. This is a thought that everyone has, but plans are often beautiful, while reality is very cruel. Ling's figure shuttled through the forest like a ghost, each appearance easily claiming the lives of a dozen or so people. Soon, flowing blood gathered together, soaking the soil underfoot, mixing with the dead leaves to become viscous, If they attacked the opponent head-on, she would use her ability to resist, which might significantly reduce the efficiency of killing. On the contrary, if they ambushed when the opponent was unprepared, using only half of the original strength, unleashing thousands of swords could make the opponent suffer heavy losses. As more and more survivors died, the opponent's speed and offensive momentum didn't slow down at all, and everyone began to panic. What kind of monster is this? Retreat, retreat. Everyone retreat to the sea. The other commanders couldn't stand it anymore. The confidence they had established before the battle was now completely gone. The opponent used the island's terrain to cover themselves, their figure like a ghost, and everyone simply didn't have time to discover the opponent's figure in time. Hearing this order, everyone finally felt relieved and ran wildly in the direction they had come from. But when they reached the beach, they were completely dumbfounded. Blazing flames appeared in their sight. The ships parked together were actually all set on fire. But they had clearly applied fire-resistant coating to the ships. How could they still be ignited? This wasn't entirely the fault of these people being stupid. Their intention was to have a large number of people blocking the front, so if the opponent wanted to destroy the logistics, they would have to cross their battle line. But who knew that the opponent could not only fly but also teleport? After fighting for so long, everyone could see that the opponent's profession was related to swords. But what the hell was with the teleportation and the fire setting? Could one person have two professions at the same time? This was simply unheard of, let alone three abilities. At this moment, everyone was completely desperate. The ships were gone. Even if the opponent didn't kill them, sooner or later, they would have to be buried at the bottom of the sea along with this supply island. Someone sat down on the ground, his face full of despair. This is not even a fair fight anymore. It's over. I shouldn't have listened to you guys. Damn it, I don't want to die yet. When the hope of returning to reality turned into despair brought about by death, everyone preferred to continue to linger in this ocean world. Who knew if there would be another chance to return to reality in the future? It was better than dying here directly, no matter what. The commanders in the crowd were also silent. They didn't know what to say to encourage these people, or to encourage themselves with self-consolation. Let's activate the backup plan. Right, they had prepared for this situation and made a backup plan. How could they have forgotten about it? Everyone came from various organizations and individuals, but without exception, each island had a member left behind, and the role of these people was naturally to come and pick them up. They just needed the others to sail over to complete the retreat. A glimmer of hope arose in everyone's eyes from the desperate situation. The team of over 1,000 people now only had more than 600 left. At this point, they didn't even have the heart to deal with the number one on the leaderboard. It would be good enough if they could leave this place alive. Everyone immediately began to notify their teammates, sending coordinates for them to come at the same time. The faces of these stay-behind personnel also revealed disbelief. 1,000 people surrounding one person almost didn't even have a chance to escape. This was so absurd that many people found it hard to accept. At the same time, some guys spread the news. Instantly, the entire channel exploded. The lone wolves who were still working hard to improve their strength also froze when they saw this news. They asked themselves, what would be the outcome if they faced these 1,000 survivors? The answer was, no bones left. In that case, it meant that there was still an insurmountable gap between themselves and the number one. There are still 6 days left. I have to hurry up. I have reasons why I must go back. And at this moment, on the supply island, Ling was sitting in the karst cave, calmly eating her lunch. Killing so many people had consumed both her ability and her stamina. Right now, everyone was scared out of their wits, so this was the best time for her to rest. Looking at the survivors gathered on the beach on the locator, a smile appeared on her lips. Just now, Qin Xiao had sent her a message, telling her that these survivors had activated the backup plan and were preparing to escape from here, of course, and Ling wouldn't agree. You want to kill me? So you kill. But if you can't win, you want to run? How could there be such a cheap thing in the world? Furthermore, so much experience would definitely improve her strength again. These people's actions of saving Grandpa with the gourd babies would only make her stronger and stronger. This is clearly coming to help me. And Ling stood up, stuffed the last piece of bread in her mouth, then slowly walked out of the karst cave with her sword. On the beach, these survivors were still nervously observing their surroundings. They thought that after the opponent lost their advantageous terrain, they wouldn't dare to attack casually again. But just as everyone was about to breathe a sigh of relief, they saw a figure walking out of the forest that made everyone's blood run cold. It's her. It's her. Chapter 203. Psychological Issues. The huge red sun gradually set in the west, and the afterglow of the setting sun sprinkled over the entire sea. The beautiful fiery clouds formed one pattern after another, making people can't help but have endless shashang. Of course, this beautiful scenery meant the end of evil in some places. None of these people survived. The viscous blood flowed down the beach into the sea, completely dyeing the nearby waves red. Corpses piled up on the ground, and the scene emitted an extremely strong smell of blood. Many sharks in the distant sea smelled the bloody smell and came here, and the animals on the island were also frightened and listed this place as a forbidden zone. At this moment, only Ling stood indifferently among the corpses, holding a sword. Her clothes, her face, were covered with splattered blood, and the long sword in her hand was still dripping blood. She let out a long sigh of relief. It's finally over. There was still some time before the island sank, so she turned and walked towards the depths of the supply island. Coming to a small stream, she took off her clothes and walked into it naked, letting the stream wash over her body. Ling submerged her head in the stream, and then a bunch of bubbles rose from it. The icy stream water could just calm her mind down. At this moment, she had figured it out. The system's purpose was not only to cultivate a strong person, but also a killer who wouldn't blink an eye when killing. Once she indulged in this killing, she believed that she would immediately become a lunatic. After washing away the filth from her body and cleaning her clothes, she dried them by the fire. By now, the sky was about to completely darken. Ling put on her clothes, stepped on her flying sword, and soared into the sky, returning to her construction island. As for the survivors who came to meet these guys, she didn't have the heart to care about them anymore. She had killed enough people today, and moreover, with the blessing of double happiness, she had successfully leveled up. There was no need to kill those people anymore. She just hoped that these guys wouldn't come to die again. She didn't want to add to the killing anymore. Now that she had reached the queen level, mammoth-level individuals were as small as ants in her eyes, and even chariot-level individuals were useless. Besides, how many chariot-level individuals were there in this channel? She just wanted to spend the last moments of this event peacefully. As for the final island, whether she could win and return to reality, she could only guarantee that she would try her best to fight for it. On the island, everyone saw that Ling's marker was rapidly moving towards them. They also knew that she had already solved her trouble and was returning to the island. Is this movement speed a bit too fast? Li Xinyue asked in surprise, looking at the coordinates on the locator. It seems that her improvement this time is huge. I'm afraid that after this time, no one in the entire channel will be able to shake her position anymore. As soon as Qin Xiao said this, everyone immediately became excited. In this case, they were already sure to win the first place reward. But when they saw Ling return, everyone was shocked. She exuded an extremely strong and chilling killing intent, like a machine without any emotion. Her face also showed no joy, only numbness. Ling, are you okay? Suyu asked with some concern. I'm fine, she said flatly, then walked upstairs alone. I've already eaten, don't worry about me. It wasn't until her figure disappeared at the top of the stairs, and the sound of her footsteps gradually faded away that the four of them looked at each other. Is she really okay? Li Xinyue asked tentatively. Qinrui remained silent as always. This wasn't his area of expertise. Suyu was also full of worry. Both of them looked at Qin Xiao in unison. Among the four, only his speech, behavior, and mind didn't seem to come from an ordinary family. Too many, he said lightly. What? She killed too many people. In the real world, those criminals can be labeled as serial killers for just killing 3 or 4 people, and they are all psychopaths. Qin Xiao sighed and said, and Ling killed thousands of people. Even though she is one of the few people I've met with a relatively strong mind, it's hard not to be affected by it. Hearing this, the two girls showed worried expressions. Will Ling also become some kind of serial killer? Not here, but if she can't suppress her killing intent after returning to reality, she is very likely to make a big mistake because of it. Qin Xiao said calmly, his face showing no emotion. Theoretically, according to psychology, Ling is more likely to become a lunatic. Qinrui, who had been silent, also spoke. Shut your crow's mouth. Li Xinyue glared at him. Qin Xiao didn't speak, Apparently Chen Rue was right. So what do we do now? Suyu asked anxiously. They couldn't just watch her fall apart. Don't let her kill anyone these days. She's a hidden time bomb now. Let's take care of the remaining enemies and let her calm down. Qin Xiao wasn't a psychologist. He only knew a little bit about it, and this was the best solution so far. Right, Suyu, you go upstairs and accompany her. Suyu was stunned and looked at everyone. Huh? What? You're the only one who has the best relationship with her here. If you don't go, should they go? Or do you expect Ling to beat me up again? Li Xinyue directly pushed Suyu towards the stairs. Chapter 204. Comfort. Upstairs, Ling lay against the headboard, hands behind her head, gazing at the scenery outside. Looking at the island lawn illuminated by lights, listening to the sound of waves crashing against the shore, she herself didn't know what she was thinking. This was her life. Even if she returned to reality and became an ordinary person again, would her life be better than now? Family troubles, trivial matters of life, all sorts of things entangled around her, making her feel overwhelmed. And here, there seemed to be no troubles at all, only the test of life and death upon landing on the survival island. Did she really have to go back? Yes, she wasn't alone now. She also carried the hopes of 4 others. Even in reality, she still had an extremely sister-complex brother. The former were friends, the latter family. These 2 options alone were enough reason for her to strive to return to reality. Knock, knock. A knock on the door brought her thoughts back to the present. Ling, can I come in? Suyu's slightly inquiring voice came through the crack in the door. Come in, Ling said flatly. She wasn't stupid. She naturally knew the purpose of the other party coming here, which was nothing more than to persuade her. Ling thought she was fine and didn't need any guidance, just a few days of rest. Creak. The wooden door made a teeth-grinding sound as Suyu pushed it open and slowly walked in. She went straight to Ling and sat next to her on the edge of the bed, the worry on her face evident. Seeing this scene, Ling chuckled. Don't look at me like that, okay? I'm fine. Anyone who didn't know better would think I was about to die. Don't say such things. Suyu rolled her eyes at her. Qin Xiao told us that you killed too many people and might have psychological problems. Just stay on the island these days, and if there are any more idiots, leave them to us. Don't worry, I'm not that fragile. Moreover, I've already broken through. Unless the entire channel gathers together, it will be difficult for me to improve my strength any further with the remaining small fries. What Ling meant was that it was impossible for the entire channel to gather together, and she also had the intention of not taking action to adjust her mentality. She just said this to reassure the other party. Sure enough, after hearing this, the expression on Suyu's face relaxed a lot. She was afraid that Ling had become bloodthirsty. Now it seemed that the other party was far from being as fragile as she had worried. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's talk about something else. Suyu pondered for a moment. Ling, do you have any compelling reasons to return? Now it was her turn to be stunned because she had just been thinking about this question. Family or friends? She said without hesitation. The option of family was without any problem. Basically, everyone had such a concern. Then your friends must be very important to you, Ling? So you could only continue with this topic. No, I don't have any friends in reality, only you guys. She said flatly. As for Tian, who had always had a very good relationship with her, the other party was first and foremost Ling's relative. Of course, at certain times, blood relations weren't the only thing that could represent family. Suyu was taken aback. She wasn't stupid and saw the confusion in the other party's eyes. For Ling, the question of returning to reality wasn't a required question, but more like an optional one. It was because of getting to know them and their desire to return to reality that her optional question became a required one. Unexpectedly, Ling had silently endured so much alone. A trace of distress flashed in Suyu's eyes. The other party was just a young girl. Why should she have to bear so much? She leaned down and gently hugged, and Ling's surprise flickered across Ling's face. Feeling the softness from the physical contact, she couldn't help but blush. What are you doing? This was the first time she had felt another person's embrace besides her own. Nothing, just hugging you. Thank you for bearing so much for us. Suyu looked up at her. Their eyes met, their cheeks inches apart. Feeling each other's breath, their heartbeats involuntarily accelerated. Ling, you smell so good. Suyu nuzzled against her, like a docile kitten, and Ling's face reddened even more. A strange desire was impacting her brain, and the atmosphere had become ambiguous at some point. Looking at the other party's close cheek, she kissed her without hesitation. Suyu's body trembled, but she didn't refuse. Thinking about the other party's psychological state, coupled with the fact that she was a beautiful woman and she wouldn't lose anything, she responded somewhat stiffly. The 2 minutes felt incredibly long for their first experience, and the gradually rising temperature in the room made them feel hot. Wait a minute, let me catch my breath. Suyu felt like she was about to suffocate. After wiping her mouth, she leaned against the side and took deep breaths. The cool sea breeze blowing in from the window seemed to bring them back to their senses a little. But seeing Ling's unsatisfied look, Suyu still chose to continue. Nothing else, just physical and mental pleasure. At this moment, in the living room on the first floor of the villa, the three were sitting around the table, eating dinner. Do you think Ling's mood will be better with Suyu helping to guide her? Li Xinyue, obviously the talkative type, kept chattering with the two of them. However, these two were not the talkative type and always perfunctory her. Anyway, chatting and communicating more can indeed make people feel better. Seeing Qin Xiao ignoring her, Chen Rue had to speak. Sigh, I hope so. If Ling really becomes a serial killer, the entire 666 channel will probably be in big trouble. Li Xinyue broke open a king crab, eating it with grease all over her mouth, but it didn't stop her from talking. Of course, they didn't know that the situation on the third floor had escalated. Although communication was still communication, it had changed from verbal comfort to physical exploration. We're almost done eating. Is Suyu still coming down to eat? The three had already saved food for her, but presumably, she had important things to do now, and eating wouldn't be delayed for a while. Just then, the sound of footsteps came, and Suyu happened to come downstairs, buttoning up the collar of her shirt as she descended. The three stared at her, and she froze. Was she about to be publicly embarrassed? Suyu, come quickly, isn't Ling okay? Apparently, the somewhat careless Li Xinyue didn't notice anything unusual about her, nor did she notice the blush that hadn't faded from her face. As for the two boys, it was very impolite to stare at someone, so they naturally wouldn't observe this. Suyu smiled. She should be in a much better mood now. Chapter 205, The Last Supper. In the last few days, Ling remained on the island, never moving from her location. During this time, there was no shortage of other short-sighted survivors who came looking for trouble, but they were all killed by the group, taking advantage of the terrain and the weapons Chenrue crafted. Today was the final day. The remaining population in the channel was now below 50,000. In just over 10 days, nearly 150,000 survivors had suffered this unwarranted disaster. This showed the cruelty of this event, no, the madness of human nature. Excluding the casualties caused by the glacial ruins, most people actually died in mutual slaughter. There was no other reason, simply to gain the opportunity to go home. As of now, everything was settled. These people had come to understand that the gap created by the previous survival islands couldn't be bridged by this event alone. Moreover, the previous attack by over 1,000 survivors had backfired, strengthening Ling's power. As a result, it was completely impossible for anyone to take the first-place spot. They didn't know what the situation was in other channels, but at least within this channel, they had completely lost all hope. After these few days of comfort, Ling's mood had greatly improved. Speaking of which, some might ask for details about the comforting. However, a live demonstration isn't appropriate. No one enjoys a censored scene. So, if the opportunity arises, it will certainly be provided. Although Ling was no longer affected by the killing spree, there were still troubles surrounding her. These survivors, knowing they had no chance, had started playing the emotional card in the channel chat. If they knew Ling's ID, the private messages would probably explode. Sister, I never intended to target you. If you can return to reality, could you please convey a message to my family? I want to eat fish. Phone number, big shot. I have a mother who just turned 1 week old and an 80-year-old child. You must help me pass on this message. Brother, I don't have anything so complicated. Just make a recording, and I'll give you my will. When you go back, please mail it for me. Thank you. Of course, there were many similar messages. No one knew who started it, but for the past few days, the entire channel had been constantly bombarded with these messages. It was even more absurd that as survivors revealed their personal information on the public screen, they could find enemies, relatives, and so on among each other, Ling had also noticed that there were no members of her family among them. Of course, even if there were, she wouldn't help. In addition, her remaining 3 blessings were finally completed, and the entire pendant had now completely become a cheap trinket. However, she didn't throw it away, but kept it as a memento. It seemed that even her cheat was anxiously bidding her farewell. Blessing points. 4. Never miss. All ranged attacks are guaranteed to hit. Blessing points. 5. Weapon enhancement. All weapons you use will be enhanced, and all crafted items will be in perfect condition. Blessing points. 6. Enhanced drops. The effects of all dropped items obtained through personal actions are enhanced. This was the final form of the remaining 3 blessings. Undoubtedly, the originally most useless 2 blessings, Fortune Favors and Great Luck, had become quite helpful after the blessing completion. This could be considered putting waste to good use. Downstairs, Su Yu and Li Xinyue were preparing a sumptuous dinner. Qin Xiao was planning something with pen and paper, and Chun Rui was busy as always. Only this time, unlike the previous few times, their faces were filled with solemnity, and their movements were extremely serious. Because today was the last day of the leaderboard event, if nothing unexpected happened, at midnight tonight, Ling would receive a message from the system. What everyone was doing was nothing more than making final preparations for her. Because everyone knew that Ling could only succeed. If she failed, there was no second option. The only outcome waiting for her was death. This time, everyone was betting everything. Either they would see each other again in reality, or they would be separated forever. They didn't know if the other survivors who hadn't reached the final island would get their next survival island. Of course, this wasn't something others should be concerned about. The only ones worried about Ling were the 4 people present. Because as long as they returned to reality, it meant that everything was over. A sumptuous dinner was quickly prepared. Lobster, oysters, king crab, steak, roast duck, Buddha jumps over the wall, fruits, drinks, and vegetable soup, a whole table of delicacies. The 5 sat around the table. Everyone understood that this might be their last meal together here, so it was okay to be a little extravagant and wasteful. Qin Xiao was the first to raise his drink and stand up, and everyone followed suit. After tonight, I hope our next meeting won't be on an island. Cheers. The drinks in their glasses were drained in one gulp, and everyone sat down with heavy hearts. No one dared to say for sure that they would succeed in what was to come. Hey, everyone be optimistic, this is a good thing. Li Xinyue said. That's right, don't you believe in my strength? And Ling echoed. To be honest, she wasn't confident herself. But even so, Ling wasn't panicking. It was all about doing her best. Do what you can, and leave the rest to fate. Eat, everyone try my cooking. Li Xinyue actively served everyone food. Let me tell you, cooking is just like making medicine. Suyu couldn't help but laugh as soon as she took a bite. I was wondering why there was a medicinal taste. These are all the best medicinal herbs I found on the supply island. I used them as side dishes for you guys. Li Xinyue also picked up a piece and tasted it. Soon, a pained expression appeared on her face. Cough. Although this thing tastes a bit bad, it can replenish qi and blood, nourish the heart and spleen, and has a miraculous effect on treating kidney deficiency. She could only use the medicinal effects to cover up the fact that this thing tasted bad, but she didn't notice the embarrassed look on Suyu's face, and Ling pretended she didn't hear anything, burying her head and speeding up her eating. Soon, dinner ended amidst their casual conversation. As usual, Suyu and Li Xinyue were cleaning up. Chen Rui also went outside to bring in the things he had been preparing for Ling. If they couldn't bring anything like last time, there was nothing they could do. But if they could, they would certainly do their best to help Ling Chapter 206, landing on the final island. What's this? Ling asked puzzledly as she took the object and opened it. Inside were gleaming yellow bullets. Hundreds of them, at least. She looked at Chen Rui in surprise. I told you I'd make bullets for you, but I didn't expect it to drag on until now. Chen Rui scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Guns might not be that helpful at your current level, but at least they can save you a lot of stamina, he added. With Ling's current strength, she naturally no longer feared bullets. But if she encountered another situation like the 1,000-person siege, these would save her a lot of time. After reaching mammoth level, survivors' abilities could block bullets, but this was only relative. It still depended on the specific ability. For example, some high-burst damage professions were inherently fragile, and only those with transformation or defensive abilities could truly withstand bullets. Overall, these things were still very useful in most scenarios. Thanks. And Ling put them away. There were also drum magazines inside, saving her the trouble of reloading. And this? Chun-Rue handed her several dark, lumpy metal objects. They were 5 homemade grenades. Sulfur and other materials are scarce. I only managed to get this much gunpowder. He explained that even on his architect-exclusive supply island, these resources were hard to find. It's fine. It's enough. At this point, Qin Xiao stepped forward and handed her a spherical device. This is the only land monster among all the sea beasts I've tamed. The device is specially made. It will only obey the commands of the person who releases it. As for sea beasts, they were useless for island combat. Although they could come ashore, they would lose their natural home field advantage and be at a disadvantage. This was something he had prepared long ago, the only thing that could help Ling. Ling knew she carried everyone's hopes. She didn't refuse their kindness. Perhaps these things would really come in handy. As for Li Xinyue, she originally wanted to give her some medicine, but Ling refused. They were truly useless. Because of her profession and abilities, getting injured would be fatal, and these medicines wouldn't help much. She could stop bleeding from minor injuries herself. Thank you all for your kindness. I won't let you down. Ling stood in the hall, looking at the 4 of them. Good luck. Everyone cheered her on. Time passed by, and soon it was midnight. As the 3 hands on the wall clock aligned perfectly, a notification, glowing brightly, appeared before Ling. Congratulations on achieving first place on the leaderboard. You have qualified to enter the final island. Do you wish to enter the final island? 2 options popped up below. Agree or refused. Ling turned to look at the 4 of them. They hadn't received any notifications about entering the next survival island. They were all staring intently at the light screen. Everyone nodded to each other, and she decisively clicked agree. After the notification on the light screen lingered for a few seconds, another prompt popped up. Island name. Final Island. Summit Tower. Objective. Survive. Description. 1 general's triumph leaves a mountain of bones. Stand at the summit and overlook the beauty of the world. Remaining time, 599 seconds. This time, the landing notification was not only given before landing, but it was also very simple. They actually gave us 10 minutes to rest. Surprise appeared on Li Xinyue's face. Because the information was given before landing, the channel chat was now in a frenzy. They all had friends, to varying degrees, in other channels. And the first place winners in those channels had apparently already announced their landing information. Yes, they were also headed to the final island, Summit Tower. Undoubtedly, this simple description might also indicate simple rules. The top players from all channels would likely fight on the same island. Thinking about it this way, only 1 person out of the thousands of channel representatives would be able to leave. At this moment, anyone with a functioning brain had already realized this. Qin Xiao and the others' faces also became serious. They knew nothing about the other channels and had no idea how strong Ling's opponents would be. Judging by the name, is it really a tower? Suyu was curious about the shape of the island. What we should be thinking about now is how many scenarios this final island has. Perhaps Summit Tower is just one of them? Qin Xiao analyzed further. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that it's just a code name. Don't worry, it's useless to speculate now. We have no way out, and I believe no channel's top player would give up this opportunity. Ling said calmly, not showing any worry in front of them. No matter how many scenarios there were or how many people there were, she would simply cut down anyone who stood in her way. Time passed by, and the light screen couldn't be closed. Instead, it remained lit, counting down. Now, there were only 3 minutes left. Li Xinyue suddenly stepped forward and said, Ling, say goodbye to everyone. Then she opened her arms. Ling didn't refuse and hugged her. Then it was Suyu's turn. She even kissed Ling on the cheek. You must survive, she whispered in her ear. Ling nodded, then exchanged light pats on the back with Qin Xiao and Chun-Rue, which counted as hugs. After all, men and women were different, and this was normal hugging etiquette between men and women. The 4 looked at Ling. No one spoke as the seconds ticked down. Until the last moment, a sweet smile remained on her face. Everyone, I'll see you in reality. Before anyone could reply, the countdown reached 0, and in the next second, and Ling vanished before their eyes. Now, all we can do is pray for her. May good fortune be with her. At this moment, Ling's vision spun, and everything around her blurred into darkness. Thump! Her feet landed heavily on the ground. Opening her eyes, she found herself in a massive indoor plaza. The walls, floor tiles, and even the ceiling were all silver white, so bright it was almost blinding. Besides her, there were many other figures in the plaza. They had also just arrived here. They were the top players from the other channels. Chapter 207, Climbing the Tower. No, something's not right. Ling observed her surroundings, a puzzled expression on her face. There were too many people, tens of thousands, far more than the existing channels. This meant there were other things mixed in. Indeed, she saw some people in tattered clothing, their appearance and demeanor unlike survivors, more like remnants. She had already figured out this group. Remnants were essentially the previous batch of survivors who had failed to conquer this island, either dying or becoming trapped here forever. It wasn't until the arrival of their current group of survivors that these puppet-like beings had a chance to breathe. They retained their memories and strength from their previous lives and were basically no different from ordinary people. But this was the final island. The remnants who died here must have at least possessed the strength to set foot on this place. It was no exaggeration to say that the remnants here would be the strongest they had ever encountered. Everyone quickly adapted to the environment and began observing their surroundings, but no one made a sudden move because the rules hadn't been announced yet. Ling was glad that she had brought her survival backpack this time, which would save her a lot of trouble. Whether survivors or remnants, the gazes of those around her were exceptionally sharp, their eyes fixed on those around them. Everyone was waiting for the rules to appear. Every channel's top player was the elite of the elite. Reaching this point alive relied on more than just luck. Summit Tower, first floor. Task: kill 100 survivors or remnants. This time, the notification was different from before. A giant light screen appeared directly in front of everyone, broadcasting automatically. Everyone's gaze was drawn to the center of the arena. Before the system's mechanized voice finished speaking, most survivors had already made their move. They lunged at the nearest person without hesitation. Here, they had no teammates and made no distinctions. Everyone within sight was an enemy. In an instant, the arena holding tens of thousands of people became chaotic, various strange and peculiar abilities colliding with each other. Ling also moved immediately. The rules were clear. This was only the first floor, and the objective was individual. Whoever reached the goal first could leave early. She took out her pistol and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang, bang, bang. The muzzle flashed as she fired continuously into the chaotic crowd. The arena was too large. Besides those near her who noticed the gunshots, everyone else was busy fighting and had no time to pay attention. Seeing her seemingly endless stream of bullets, those who had intended to rush towards Ling froze and quickly changed direction to attack others. Were they kidding? Blocking a single bullet was hard enough, and she was practically wielding a submachine gun. Ling's main targets were those fighting in the distance. At this moment, they wouldn't notice her sneak attacks and were the easiest to kill. Those nearby didn't want to provoke her because of her gun. After all, there were over 10,000 people in the arena. Why bother with her? She was positioned near a corner, not using any abilities, just running towards the opposite side of the arena, constantly shooting and ambushing along the way. For a time, countless people died from her sniping. The goal of 100 kills was quickly achieved. Task complete. Proceeding to the second floor, with the appearance of a personal notification, Ling felt the scene around her shift. Clear, blurry, clear, and in another blink, everyone around her had vanished. Summit Tower, second floor. You are the first survivor to enter the second floor and are designated as the defender. Task: kill 10 challengers who ascend to the second floor. The light screen disappeared, and Ling stood in the center of the arena. A black sofa suddenly appeared behind her. So thoughtful? She immediately sat down to rest. This arena was only 1/10 the size of the previous one. Rather than being a defender, Ling was more like the boss of this floor. If someone managed to kill her, they would take her place until they completed the objective and could leave. Soon, a survivor ascended to the second floor. He glanced at Ling resting on the sofa in surprise, then saw the notification that popped up before him. In the next second, his eyes sharpened, and he charged towards her. Bang! A gunshot echoed. The challenger summoned a suit of armor, armed to the teeth. The bullet struck the armor, creating only a spark, not even slowing him down. Indeed, someone who could kill 100 people and ascend from the first floor so quickly wouldn't be afraid of pistol bullets in a head-on charge. Crack! In the next second, a dense chill emanated from beneath Ling's feet, rapidly spreading outwards. In an instant, it completely froze her opponent. She hadn't even moved from the sofa. So what if he was the first to arrive? If he wasn't queen level, he could only be instantly killed. Perhaps the opponent didn't understand until his death that he didn't even have the right to touch this white-haired woman. Soon, the second and third challengers arrived on the second floor. Without exception, they were all instantly killed. Task complete. Proceeding to the third floor, the surrounding scenery changed again. Once it stabilized, Ling found herself in an arena even smaller than the second floor. Summit Tower, third floor. Task: kill one survivor or remnant. This time the task was even simpler. No sofa appeared behind her, so she simply sat on the floor to rest. Unsurprisingly, she must have been the first to reach the third floor, and everyone else would probably be delayed on the second floor for a long time, so she rested without any worries. A full hour passed before a figure finally appeared on the third floor. The person's clothes were tattered, their body covered in wounds and blood. Clearly, they had exhausted themselves to reach the third floor. There was no healing or stamina recovery after clearing a level. Wounded and exhausted, meeting Ling at her peak, it could only be said that they were unlucky, and Ling wouldn't pick up this easy kill. There were plenty of people behind her who would. Chapter 208. The Terrifying Mysterious Person. Summit Tower, 4th floor. Task: eliminate all puppets. This time, the system gave Ling no time to rest. Almost the instant she appeared, the area swarmed with monsters. For her, it was an instant kill whether against survivors or these monsters. However, the sheer number of monsters made things slightly more troublesome. These densely packed monsters weren't like the puppets encountered on previous survival islands. They were incredibly fast, like sprinting zombies. A rough estimate put their numbers at over 1,000. The difficulty of this floor had increased exponentially compared to the previous ones. Ling immediately pulled grenades from her backpack, yanked the pins, and tossed them in all directions. Boom, 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 boom. A series of violent explosions echoed through the hall. In an instant, countless puppets were blown to smithereens. Immediately afterward, countless sword beams flashed, the explosive strikes further detonating the remaining monsters, a fierce inferno engulfing the entire arena. This unparalleled destructive force rapidly spread outward from Ling as the center. All the puppets that approached her were reduced to dust. Half an hour later, the entire arena was filled with the smell of burning and covered in black debris. Except for Ling, there wasn't a single thing standing. Task complete. Proceeding to the 5th floor, the scene before her eyes shifted again, everything around her disappearing. Here, there was no concept of time, no distinction between day and night. There was only endless slaughter, seemingly without end. Survivors, remnants, puppets, onlookers. Whether they were transmigrated beings or creations of the system, at this moment, if they obstructed her path forward, they were her enemies. An unknown amount of time passed. Ling was already physically and mentally exhausted from the constant killing. Each end was just the beginning of the next level. When would it end? This was incredibly torturous for any normal person. Watching the monster before her collapse heavily to the ground, she finally got a chance to breathe. But after only a few seconds, the prompt popped up again. Task complete. Proceeding to the next floor, the surrounding scene began to change. The location was the same, only the monster corpses disappeared. Summit Tower, 8th floor. Task: kill the tyrant. Just as Ling prepared for battle, the scene before her stunned her. A girl in a white blouse and blue pleated skirt stood ahead. Her long, cascading hair was the same white as Ling's. Ling instinctively thought she was a member of the family, but searching her memory yielded no recognition. The girl was beautiful, the adorable kind, but her heterochromatic red and blue eyes held an icy coldness. The bells on her wrist bracelet jingled pleasantly with her movements. Is this the 8th floor's tyrant? Ling's eyes held confusion. She couldn't equate this cute little girl with the so-called tyrant. Hearing her words, the girl giggled. What about me doesn't look human? The girl's voice was sweet, making her seem even more adorable. Perhaps she was the type of little girl who would cry for a long time if you punched her. But Ling knew that this little girl was definitely not to be trifled with. Hearing her words, Ling froze, unsure how to respond. Her attention had been completely captivated by the girl, and she hadn't noticed the large, motionless figure standing not far away. It was a pitch-black monster, covered in bone spurs, with green liquid flowing through the patterns on its back, looking incredibly disgusting. This should be the tyrant of this floor, but why was it so quiet, standing there motionless? Then who are you? After confirming that the girl wasn't the tyrant, but a human capable of communication, Ling voiced her confusion. She couldn't be a survivor who had arrived earlier, could she? The aura the girl exuded wasn't something an ordinary person could possess. Ling had a premonition that she was definitely not a survivor. Oh, how do I explain this? The girl propped her chin in thought. Anyway, I'm here to help you. Help me? Ling was puzzled. The girl hadn't revealed her identity, which made her frown. Yes, you're severely depleted right now. You'll die if you reach the last floor like this, the girl said calmly, then pondered for a moment before continuing. Your mind has been slightly influenced by a certain someone. You should have normally cleared 9 islands before arriving here. You're too impatient. You mean, the next floor is the last one? Ling asked, half believing, half doubting. Yes, the last floor of this island, is it called the Overlord or something? The girl said thoughtfully. Just then, the motionless tyrant's eyes suddenly turned gold. With a tremor, it seemed to break free from some kind of restraint. By you, you've violated the rules. The tyrant unexpectedly spoke. As soon as it did, the entire plaza shook violently. The girl's eyes suddenly sharpened, and an incredibly terrifying aura erupted from her. Shut up, or I'll slaughter you too. Because Ling had grasped a sliver of spatial power, she clearly sensed that the aura emanating from the girl also contained a kind of spatial power. However, compared to the girl's, hers was like a stream to a vast ocean. Just from the girl's aura, Ling felt the surrounding space seemingly solidify, the tyrant restrained once more. If this terrifying aura were directed at her, she would probably be instantly killed. The tyrant didn't speak, seemingly pondering something. After a few seconds, the gold in its eyes faded, and the surroundings calmed down again. It had actually backed down. Just now, what was that? Ling asked the girl in shock. With that level of power, she couldn't possibly be a survivor. A terrifying thought arose in Ling's mind, one she dared not acknowledge. Oh, that's the someone I just mentioned. The girl suddenly stepped forward. In my words, it's the heavenly Tao. In your words, it should be called the system. Hearing these words, all the hair on Ling's body stood on end. She could hardly believe what she had just heard. Chapter 209, 9th Floor, Slay the Overlord. It was just as she had guessed. The tyrant's speech had indeed been the system itself, and this culprit, manipulating everyone, forcing them into mutual slaughter, possessing godlike power, was truly conscious. Yet, this being, who toyed with everyone's lives, had actually backed down in front of this girl. The reason for backing down? Absolute power. In other words, this girl named Bayu wasn't joking. She truly had the power to kill the system. Conversely, the system was aware of her power and thus acquiesced to her rule-breaking behavior. This girl wasn't from this world. She came from another. In other words, many other worlds also possessed a system. And this girl was clearly from one of them. Seeing Ling's shocked expression, Bayu understood she was being seen as the same kind of being as the system. Hey, don't think of me like that. I'm different from those things, okay? The girl paused. You just need to know that I'm from the same world as you and I'm here to help you. As for the rest, you can figure it out yourself after you go back. And Ling was stunned. Not a system, but possessing power surpassing it. She didn't know about other worlds, but she was very clear about how terrifying the system's power was here. Someone stronger than the system. Was that even human? Perhaps God was a more fitting description. Look at me. The girl ignored Ling's shock and stepped directly in front of her. In the next second, their eyes met. Ling felt the girl's eyes were as deep as a galaxy, as if containing the entire universe. Her eyes were beautiful, but Ling had no time to admire them. At this moment, she felt her mind clear. all accumulated negative emotions vanishing. All right, it's fine now. The girl looked at her with a gentle smile. This feeling is really strange. And Ling felt incredibly lucid, in a state of absolute rationality. Right, there's one more thing for you. This is the only thing I can do. The girl extended her right hand, a ball of black energy appearing in her palm. She then took Ling's hand and placed it within hers. Any more would be Ya Miao Zhujiang. This should be enough. Come on, don't be nervous, absorb it. Looking at the black energy in the girl's palm, Ling sensed an incredibly strange aura, an energy she had never felt before. The girl possessed power beyond the systems. It would be child's play for her to control Ling, so there was no reason to harm her. Moreover, a being of this level wouldn't stoop to lying. Without much thought, Ling resolutely chose to trust her. The moment the black energy touched her body, it instantly merged with her. She felt the change within herself. Her strength had somehow grown, and she had grasped an incredibly strange attribute, darkness. This was something she would have to comprehend on her own. Having the ring scan it would be a joke. All right, I've done all I can. The rest is up to you. I look forward to the day we meet in reality. The girl put her hands behind her back, a sweet smile on her face. You can rest as long as you want. Just kill that silly thing to go to the next floor. Thank you. I'm eternally grateful, and Ling bowed, but received no response. Looking up again, the girl had already disappeared. Only Ling and the immobilized tyrant remained in the arena. Ling had actually rested enough during their conversation, but to be safe, she chose to rest a little longer. After all, this was a freely given opportunity, and the next floor was the last. She had to be fully prepared. An hour later, Ling had adjusted herself to peak condition. She felt terrifyingly strong. The system didn't descend upon the tyrant again. As if wary of Baiyu, it had completely disappeared. She stood up, slowly approached with her sword, and casually decapitated the monster with a single swing. The spatial confinement around the tyrant vanished. The monster of the 8th floor died inexplicably beneath her blade. Task complete. Proceeding to the next floor, with a blurring of her vision, she finally arrived at the last floor. Standing before Ling was a man in strange clothing, holding a long spear. Summit Tower, 9th floor. Task: slay the Overlord. A humanoid overlord? Ling's expression turned grave. Generally, the closer an island overlord's form was to a human, the stronger it was. And this one even knew how to use weapons. The moment the notification disappeared, the overlord thrust his spear forward. A terrifying cyclone tore through the silver-white floor. Rushing towards Ling, she reacted swiftly, teleporting away. She reappeared in midair. Instantly, thousands of sword beams erupted from behind her, imbued with various energies, all pouring down towards the overlord below. Yellow sword beams, heavy as mountains. Green sword beams, swift as the wind. Red sword beams, exploding and surging. Countless beams of light converged, resembling a brilliant rainbow, carrying various effects, possessing a terrifying destructive power capable of annihilating everything. The overlord, spear in hand, glowed with a red light. He lowered his stance and swept his spear in a wide arc, unleashing a terrifying energy that instantly covered the entire arena, forming an absolute domain around him. Any attack that entered this domain instantly lost its original power. Ling's attack became utterly ordinary. The speeding swords were effortlessly deflected by the overlord's spear. Before Ling could react, swish, the overlord stomped, effortlessly shattering the floor beneath him. He shot upwards with terrifying speed. A menacing red spear beam thrust towards Ling's chest. Her face paled. A long sword materialized in her hand. With a thought, the pure white blade turned pitch black, then ignited with black flames. Feeling the ominous aura, she ignored everything else and swung with all her might towards the overlord. Chapter 210. The End of All Things. The moment the red light touched the black flames, the all-consuming, unstoppable energy was completely neutralized. The black flames on her sword possessed an even more perverse ability to incinerate everything, and the red energy was naturally within its range. In an instant, the overlord's attack was completely dispelled. The collision of spear tip and sword edge was like cutting through tofu. Ling effortlessly sliced the overlord's weapon in two. Even she hadn't expected this terrifying and bizarre power. The sword pierced through the Overlord's body, slaying him in one stroke. Perhaps in his final moments, the Overlord couldn't comprehend how someone who had arrived early on the final island could defeat him. Ling landed steadily, staring at the Overlord's corpse, lost in thought. Is this how it all ends? She felt no joy at the prospect of returning to the real world. Instead, numerous mysteries troubled her. From her encounter with Baiyu, she had a vague sense of something amiss. Perhaps the real world wasn't as peaceful as she imagined. Perhaps her transmigration wasn't accidental. Task complete. Entering. Final island. End? What? And Ling was startled. There's more? In the next second, the scene around her began to shift. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she collapsed unconscious. And Ling, wake up. In a daze, she heard someone calling her name. She forced her eyes open, and familiar faces came into view. Suu and Li Xinyue sat by her bedside, looking at her with concern. Chen Rue and Qin Xiao, who were sitting on the sofa, stood up as she awoke. How do you feel? They asked with concern. Why am I here? Shouldn't I be on the final island? And Ling sat up abruptly, checking her body, finding no injuries. Looking out the window, the sun was shining, and waves lapped against the sparkling sea. The sea breeze cleared her head slightly. We don't know what happened. You suddenly returned and fainted, Suyu explained. I thought there wouldn't be a death penalty for failing after entering the final island early. Li Xinyue was immediately glared at by the others as soon as she spoke. Realizing her mistake, she quickly shut her mouth. So, I failed? And Ling was confused. She clearly remembered killing the Overlord, but what happened after that? Why couldn't she remember? Did Baiyu send her back? Or was it that, with her current strength, she didn't meet the requirements to return to reality? Her head hurt. And Ling clutched her head. Suyu quickly stepped forward to support her. It's okay, don't worry about it. If we failed this time, we'll have another chance. Exactly. It's just a matter of participating in 4 more survival islands. Li Xinyue also comforted her. Wait, how do you know there are only 10 survival islands in total? And Ling suddenly asked, her gaze sharp. It's all over the channel. The system announced it, Li Xinyue explained with a slightly aggrieved expression. The system? And Ling immediately opened her light screen. The survivors were engaged in heated discussions, none of them caring whether Ling and her group had succeeded. Since I failed, who succeeded? Is there any news? And Ling asked the 4 of them without turning away from the light screen. We don't know. Even if someone succeeded, no one would know immediately, right? And Ling, don't overthink it. Even if you don't return to reality, it's okay. We're all here with you. And Ling abruptly turned around. Those words had come from Suyu. This isn't the construction island. You're all fake. At this moment, a red and a blue light flashed imperceptibly in her eyes. In that instant, she remembered. This is the final island end. As soon as she spoke, everything around her shimmered and began to disappear. When the scene stabilized, she was in her own home. Looking at her sister-in-law and Lin bustling about, a cold smile appeared on her lips. With Baiyu's help, she could now easily see through illusions. Undoubtedly, this scene was also fake. Linger, what are you standing there for? Come and eat. Her sister-in-law was just as she remembered. This felt incredibly real, just like in the Vice City island. The summit tower had been a test of strength. The end was a test of the spirit. Of course, all of this was useless against her now. It's over. I've seen through everything, she said softly. Linger, what nonsense are you talking about? Clearly, Ling was speaking to the system in the next second. Everything around her shattered again. She was back in the arena where she had slain the Overlord. Congratulations on completing the final island challenge. You have qualified to ascend to Heavenly King level. As the light screen vanished, a door opened in the wall at the end of the arena with a click. At the same time, Ling felt her strength surge dramatically. If she faced the Overlord now, she was confident she could kill him with a single strike. So this is Heavenly King level? Not that impressive. She chuckled and shook her head, then slowly walked towards the exit. It was a dark corridor, the light at the end beckoning her towards the exit of this world. As she walked, the light screen ring on her finger began to crumble, turning to ash and disappearing completely. The pendant on her chest also snapped, and fell to the ground. So her cheat had also been a product of this world. But it still couldn't stop her. The light at the end was right before her. What awaited in Ling was her rebirth. I'm back. The end.